Well, it's 6 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order and start with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Siebel. Bender. Here. Walker.
Here.
Bean.
Here.
I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 5, I'm appointing Gene Walker to be Mayor Pro Tem. Number 6, I need a motion to approve the February 2nd minutes.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the February 2nd regular meeting minutes. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Siebel.
Yes.
Bender.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Bean.
Yes.
I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
So number 7 is Chris Fischels, the real estate agent who's marketing our development, Eagles Landing. And Chris is going to give us an update.
Yes, I'm Chris Fischels here to talk today, just give you an update of what we got going out in the land. Timing was good because I was able to bring an offer today for you for one of the pieces. This would be the piece right next to McDonald's, a 3.65 acres, parcel 1. But an interested party wanted to build 2 smaller 3-piece or 3 10-inch strip malls. It'd be interesting, ultimately they wrote an offer subject to some due diligence, see if they can get the potential interested customers to come to the marketplace. They see a need, they see the same need that I see, and I'm sure others see, that they'd like to have more restaurants, more retail there, and they want to try to attract that. So you have an offer here for the asking price, cash offer, closing date's pretty aggressive for August 31st, knowing the road and stuff would get put in. It is subject to some due diligence. Inspection period is what they would call that, allowing to make sure the infrastructure is going to be there in place for what they would need, make sure they can attract the right kind of potential tenants to go in there. As you can see of the drawing, it has several different drive-through angles. Drive-through is a big thing right now with COVID. So all these new retail players want to look at how they can incorporate drive-throughs. So this layout is probably a way to maximize the drive-through opportunities. So I know we're not doing any voting or anything on this today, but it's more just so you guys can see it, understand it, ask questions. I was hoping, ideally, I was really marketing for a hotel in this piece. This was ideal piece for a hotel, in my opinion. Retail wants to be as close as they can to the traffic, so this is attractive for retail as well. Hotels are a little more challenging right now with COVID. Numbers don't look good. People are not staying in as many hotels as what they used to. We think that'll come back. We think there's an opportunity to still get a hotel in this development. It's just gonna take a little more time. We gotta get a little past COVID, a little more into the summer or the fall. I've talked to a number of hotel players that would be interested, but going to a bank right now, hotels that have a lot more financial money down to make these deals go for new construction. And of course, lumber prices are up quite a bit too, so definitely optimistic we're still gonna get a motel hotel there. It's just gonna take a little more time to get through that. So good feedback, wanted to share this with you, see if you had any questions and so forth.
Chris, so we had talked about eliminating this water feature. For me, it's always been kind of a sore point because they never seem to work. Did that enter into any of the discussions with this offer on keeping or removing that feature?
They're interested in the traffic, so ultimately that water feature has, sure it's a nice attraction, but there's no need for their point. They'd be interested either way.
Yeah.
One thing attractive of that water feature, and I say water feature, we have to have water retention, so it doesn't need to be a water feature. One thing attractive on this development, you were holding all the water retention in one location instead of this potential customer having to do their own water retention, so it saves cost. It's more efficient, it looks better all over, you know, the whole development, instead of having smaller little water retentions on each site. So I think having a water retention is important, but doesn't need to be a water feature at this current stage.
Yeah, well, it's actually shown
Of course,
on the concept drawings as a wonderful lake. And my experience has been, as I've mentioned to you and probably the council, a lot of times those don't work out very well.
Why don't they work out? I'm just curious. What happens? Why don't they work out?
Well, if there's not enough natural water to keep it full, it ends up being a scummy little pit.
Quick start, look at theirs.
And
Right
So-
next to their retention pond. It's just a mosquito haven.
they had not determined that, for sure, that there was gonna be a natural water source there. It was, as Chris said, more of a retention area to start with. And the idea was, you know, it looks wonderful on the conceptual drawing, to have a sparkling lake. But there's a good chance that it may not be that way. I've seen a couple developments in Cedar Falls that started out with wonderful water features, and within a few years, they eliminated them.
Huh.
And the last time we had talked about this, Adrian from Bolton and Mink had mentioned something about more work was needed for a drain from this feature to the natural drainage, which was on the east side there, that little wooded area. And we had kicked around the idea that perhaps we could incorporate some sort of a natural water feature there. And I think, as Chris pointed out, this could actually open up more available land if we didn't have a 2-acre or whatever it is.
that's my favorite part about it. To me, you have some very valuable real estate right there. So I look at that pond feature as very attractive, nice looking. But gosh, I mean, you know, getting this to take off, we just have very good taxable income coming in off of that. And if we could, ultimately, if we ever took that feature or attraction down more towards the waterway area, then we could have a, you know, a nice trail down there, we could have different options, but yet we're not taking up real estate that's gonna be built on, that could be taxable. We're here, if we can move a feature here and have nice walkways or people coming out from their buildings and having lunches out here, sitting out here, picnic table type stuff, would be a nice attraction. So that pond looks good in Central, but currently with this proposal, it's not required, per se.
That's good, because we have not made any decisions on that. You know, I needed input from the council. But Adrian, from the engineer's office, asked me if he should redraw the drawings, and I think we just decided to leave them as is until Chris gets further along in this.
Yeah.
And if he has some prospects that want it or don't want it, that could guide the
Okay.
council's decision.
And this will help me if there's flexibility to that, knowing if somebody would be interested in that piece and saying you guys are open to the idea of not having that feature and moving that feature further down into the waterway would be attractive for potentially all parties and have more taxable income.
Chris, I have a question for you. I've looked in Cedar Falls at their growth. You didn't talk, I understand costs and expenses, but I would think a hotel chain, with the $100 million project gonna go just a couple miles up to the west from this area that we have, that they would, just be craving to wanna build somewhere close. It's a 2-minute thing on and off the interstate. That's what my hope and expectations are, that we get a hotel or a large chain or something to come in there to kind of really kick it off. That's what my thought has been all along since this started. So I'm hoping that you can work on that fact. You have the contacts for that stuff. I'm hoping that that can come forward at some later date and have one of those out there and be a real attraction for staying. And because the hotel out there, I think that one that's out there is kind of busy most of the time. I'm not sure. I see cars there all the time. I would just think that would be quite a deal to have out there. I mean, well, I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but that's what I've been led to believe and understand since we started this, that we were gonna kinda go after those things. So I hope that we're still gonna focus on that. I do appreciate what you're bringing forward with the strip mall stuff, but I'm sure that you're gonna have that in the back of your mind that, you know, even a bigger development would be great for us and you and the city.
And I fully support that. I truly think that's realistic, and I think it's a real good option, so I don't think I'm not giving up on that at all. I mean, to me, it's gonna just take a little bit longer. They might not be our first player in, they're gonna be our second or third or fourth player in, so, I think we still got in some nice attractive lots for that. So yeah, I think in my opinion, and hotels wanna go next to restaurants, next to food, and so this retail is gonna be a nice offering to that. To me, it's only gonna attract even, maybe building a bigger one or a more attractive one, so I think it's gonna be a positive all the way around.
Don't you think the hotel business might pick up in, we'll say, 18 months from the softness that it's in right now?
I personally think there's gonna be a lot of things happening 18 months from now, a lot more than what's happening now, so yes, I think there's gonna be a big boom after this slows, after this, as we get through a lot of this, and I think the hotel's gonna be a big
Well,
one.
I think two things. One, we get rid of the virus like everybody hopes, and that'll open up businesses. And the second is that the water area will be opened. I don't remember the exact date that they're trying to open, but I think that's gonna help draw too.
Yep.
I don't think it's gonna go quite as fast as we thought it would because of the situation in the world today.
I'm still optimistic. I still think we got some great pieces. I think there's some nice features we have here. We have a good off-ramp. I mean, to me, yeah, I'm excited to bring this to you today, and I think there's gonna be more to be coming, so.
Yeah, no, I think this is an excellent beginning.
Couple answers I need, at some point, there was some discussions that day about some utility easements may or may not be there. If you guys remember, there's some Mid-American lines running through there. There was some questions if there was an easement in place or not, so that can deter some of these, lots that are backing up here. We just need to determine if that's gonna change, if those are gonna get rerouted. So small things we need to know, but at some point, I'd like to reach out to them and go through that process with them to just get some more detail. I would prefer to have a picture without the pond, so then I have options to show them. Here's one without the pond, here's one with one. My fear is we get so far down the road and people get interested, they expect that pond, and all of a sudden we're gonna be put at a point where, hey, I seen on the picture, this is what I kind of bought into. So I think, I hate to see us spend much more money with that, but just truly consider thinking about having a very basic drawing where I can say, hey, this is our new illustration. Until we choose to go back to the pond, we can run with this, and then we won't be stuck in a position where we have to do it, maybe we don't want to, perhaps, so.
What's it take to make a central retention pond? Is it possible in that area?
It's a little more challenging, it's pretty flat, based on that gentleman's information he was sharing that day, but it's still possible. There was talk of moving it further down to more back.
To the east?
Yeah, and that was more of a natural lay. There was talk of maybe taking some ground in the back of these lots out and making a longer piece. Still attract, not really a pond look, but more of a just water retention. Those heavy rains where it can hold the water. So there was talk back here, there was talk back here. To me, it leaves a very nice, attractive lot available for customers. So I think we have options, we have good options. I think it is worth pursuing this a little bit to get another option out there so we don't go back to the corner and have to produce that pond.
I see the hotels looking at the east end of it, so that they're away from the traffic up by the truck stops. If they had a nice restaurant and a hotel down that end, I think it'd be ideal.
Absolutely. And know that people I've talked to about the hotel, they're very interested, just timing out ready to say, hey, we're ready to commit, so that's the catches. There's interest there, it's just getting them to physically produce an offer at this point, it's just gonna take a little bit more time.
Yeah, well, and so the street is gonna go in the spring.
Yeah.
That'll kind of build a little bit of interest as well, so. Good. All right, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
So number 8, we have discussion, possible action on fundraising the lines. Chris, you want to say something?
Yeah, so, we talked last week, I reached out to 4 different companies, regarding coming in and televising, filming, the section that me and Chris even have already gone through last year. And, on this sheet here, I kind of broke it down on what it would cost for everything. They all had some concerns that they didn't really think it was very necessary, they thought it was kind of a waste of money for us to have them clean and televise in lines that we already ran, and we have, you know, we have some really good valuable data that, you know, they could feed off of to get that fixed. So my other thought was if we were gonna spend the money to maybe push them to a different zone, but ultimately, so the zone that we initially talked about, 16,000 feet of pipe, the other zone that would be in the heights, it's about 30,000 feet of pipe, so that would take our number from, you know, essentially 40,000 to closer to 80,000. One of the biggest things that we need to factor in is this information or data, they say is only good for about 3 years, and then they have to go back in and, I mean, nothing's gonna change, it could get worse, but they said after 3 years, generally, if you haven't done anything, they wanna clean them and re-televise everything. And the bottom line is we don't have the money to clean everything, or to pay to get everything fixed in zone 1, the stuff that we already have cleaned and televised. So I guess, and they said if we did hire them to go into zone 5, which we were gonna push into the heights, they said they would take all our information and give recommendations, review and give recommendations on how they would, go about fixing the stuff that we have. But ultimately, we don't have the money to fix everything, you know, we can't fix everything and pay for them to televise and clean everything again.
So if, you know, you want to switch zones to the heights,
If you guys are sold on, if you guys are set on us getting cleaned and televised by an outside company rather than us doing it, after talking with all 4 of these companies, they recommended we go to a zone that we haven't been into, so we get more for our money, basically.
yeah. And generally, the numbers they have, the per hour or per foot prices apply to whatever zone we want to send them to.
Right. Well, that's for 16,000 feet. I mean, if I
Yeah.
told them they can do the whole town, then, yeah, then the per foot would probably go
Yeah.
down.
But their understanding was that
16,000 feet, that's what they bid, 16,000 feet. And I wanna push them to 30,000 feet. Or we could keep them at 16,000 feet and break down, section per zone 5, or essentially put it anywhere. But they haven't seen our map, so they just 16,000 feet of 8-inch clay pipe is all they did.
standard price of
Yeah.
cleaning and
Yeah.
televising.
Yeah, and then with, you know, if they have to make 3 or more passes, that's heavy cleaning, so then and they basically all said, you can't really put an honest number on that, so it's kind of just a percentage. So working with them, we kind of just figured out a ballpark of what that would be per company that came with it.
We get, I would like to have the map of the zoning of what, so I know the zones in the town. I haven't gotten any of that, you know. I'd like to have a copy of that, just so I know correctly when we're talking zone 5, zone 3, what the zone is, where it is, so we're a little bit more knowledgeable than just seeing on paper and somebody talking. I've never received any of that.
You wanna look at this?
Well, I'd like a copy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get you a copy.
And we don't actually have to make a decision tonight, but it's a possible discussion. And, we felt like we wanted to get some feedback from the council on, which direction we want.
No, I would like to take a look at the videos that are done, see if they're good. If that's gonna make a difference. Yeah, I've got the last one, I'm just looking at
That was like 4 years ago.
What would be your recommendation, which zone, if we were just gonna do one?
I'd go zone 5.
That's ours.
Well, we went back through, all of our history, and we only have about 17,000 feet of pipe that's been televised in 12 years. And we just did, almost 20,000 in a year, Chris and Cheyenne did. So we're slowly plugging through it, but way more aggressively than we have. But, it also comes back to, I don't have $300,000 to put in zone 1 or zone 5, we gotta do it as we can afford to do it.
Would we do that all hold on? Taking your zone ones and then switching some of that money to fix?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, as long as, like I said, the ones I got weren't intelligent, so. I just see
These
them-
are, these
see
are,
them ones.
we had somebody come down that's, NASCO certified, and he didn't recommend us getting that certification, because we're not doing it for hire or nothing like that, we're just doing it in-house. And basically, he said all that is so everybody uses the same terminology as marking it. He said, but you're never gonna turn in this tape to 2 different NASCO certified people and get back the same results, because it all comes down to opinion.
Well, it depends on the software.
That's what-
You're running camera software, you don't have an IT product. CPs.
That's what all 4 of them basically said. So I think we got a pretty good system going. I mean, I think we should just keep with what we're going and fix as we can. And they all said that they would review and give recommendation on our tapes. We can kind of compare them. Chris has already gone through and marked a bunch of problem childs and he has an idea of how he thinks he would fix them, and we'll just compare notes and fix it at the end of the day.
But here's the question. Anything over, what is it, 50,000, we've got to get a, for 50,000?
Well, infrastructure is 150,000.
Is it?
I'll have to double check, but that's, I know some of it is included in that.
Yeah, I just don't want to run into the problem of not being certified, where these engineers say, well, you gotta do it again.
Well, they, after talking to all 4 of these guys, they say the data and information that we give them, it can still be processed by an engineer. It doesn't have to be certified, as long as it's good value of information. So,
Well, so, my understanding of one of the reasons we were looking at this was to take one of the worst areas of town, or what we suspected to be one of the worst areas, and getting that done so that you can move forward with the rest of the town. Is that not, everybody understand?
right, but, you still gotta remember that I can't budget enough money to fix everything that I have.
No, that's
already
not what,
televised now.
no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying, let's get that area done so we know what we have and move forward incrementally
Right.
with that.
And then still hire an outside source to televise like Zone 5.
Do we know that Lafayette, North Lafayette's our worst zone in town?
No, we don't, I mean,
That's what I've always heard, I've never.
nothing's really been looked at.
In other words, this is gonna be only one.
Yeah.
So- The other thing, it's kind of like, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't want to get into heights and cause a problem on a pipe that's been flowing, and I don't even know if it's practical. Flowing fine for 30-some years, and all of a sudden now we're starting to clean it, televise it, and then all of a sudden now we're starting to create problems. Because as far as what I can see, there's very little been done in heights.
Yeah, but then it'd be better than one now than
Yeah,
midnight on a Saturday night,
right.
So
But I want to have some money sitting there to think, to where I can.
I guess here's the question I've got for you. And that is, what would it take or how comfortable do you feel with your areas involved in that zone one that you looked at? And what would it take to go ahead and have them take a look at it and just give us their take on it? Because if we don't give them the cleaning, they're not gonna, of course, won't do that, they want to contract that out by time.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a gray area, because they said, well, if we give you zone 5, we'll give you recommendations.
And I know what
Yeah.
camera gear you've got, and it's the same thing that we got, portable unit. And you can't do headers the way that you typically would, so, I don't know, I just think, I'd like to see zone one done, and then you know what to fix and fix it. Before you jump on something else and try to fix it, you know. But I don't know. All I saw says 12 videos and they look good.
If these are exceptionally good. I mean, we had training.
Yeah.
From an ASCO, Chris and Cheyenne did.
Well, from my perspective, I'm sort of relying on Chris to determine what zone needs to be done, because I assume that if we get that televised, and we have problems there, then we're gonna prioritize repairs and that sort of thing in that zone.
Right.
And you're moving on to different zones so that we kind of stay ahead of this, isn't that really what we're hoping to do? So,
And I'm sure that everybody wants to see it, like Chris said, nobody's seen it, nobody knows.
Right.
So, I guess the question is that if we've seen one, I'm kind of leaning your way, move on to something else, and at least we know a good idea of what's happening on one. I also see the dilemma of, if we do, let's say, go to zone 5, we've got a lot of fixes on zone 1, and then all of a sudden you got a lot of fixes on zone 5, you're kind of,
Out of money.
yeah.
I'd rather pick a zone and televise and clean it, if there's issues, fix it, then move on than jumping around myself.
Yeah. So there's two different ways of going about it, so.
well,
Now, if they clean it and televise it, we'll say this summer, okay? We'll use May. How long do you have to repair that stuff in there so you can build up money?
They said generally 2 to 3 years. You don't want to go past 2 to 3 years.
Okay,
once
so
they've already
if
determined
they
costs.
went in and looked at zone 1 and they said you got $250,000 worth of work to do, we could put it off a year and a half till we can accumulate money.
We've done jobs that are.
But they said, that, it'd just be a huge waste of money for them to come in and clean and televise it, everything, we already have all the data for it. They said, well, just let us review and do recommendations on what you guys have already, the work you guys have already done. And then, we can build from there.
Now, does your camera take good enough pictures that they can look at, an engineer can look at and see what it takes to fix it?
Yeah.
Okay. And I know this question's been bugging you, why are we hiring it? Why aren't you doing it, taking the pictures?
Well, because there was concern that, our direction of fix wasn't gonna be, the right direction, I guess.
Who decided that?
We just didn't wanna, we don't wanna do a spot repair when it should be a line repair or grout something that,
Well, I understand that, but if you go in and televise all of, we'll say zone 1, and you can find the spots in it, then you can have somebody come in and take care of it.
Right, that's
You
why.
don't have to pay somebody to televise it.
No, I don't wanna do that.
Okay.
I wanna get recommendations for what they would do, have them review and give us recommendations on how they would fix the stuff.
and really, we're trying to get them caught up, Gene, so that if we get one zone done, then we can kind of plan repairs there, and that gives Chris and his crew a little breathing room
Right.
to be televising ahead of.
I'm all for doing one zone and get it taken care of, then move on to another one.
Yeah, I am too. I guess
you pick the one you think is the worst, and you haven't had any trouble
We
in
just had
zone
to start-
five,
We had to start somewhere.
you know. If there's a lot of, you know, we're getting ready to do now, if you have to redo it, if it's gonna have street stuff tore up, now would be the time to do it, not after we put
Yeah,
a
that's
new
why,
road in.
that's why Chris even started with that.
Yeah.
And we're in zone 2 now, which is an orange zone, basically right across the street, so.
I would be all in favor of going through zone 1, getting it taken care of before we put the new road in.
From what his review, we've, in Minor and Saunders, we've spent basically the money that we had in our budget.
Well, I think between now and, the March meeting, that you need to sit down with the mayor and figure out how we're gonna come up with the money to do it. Whether we gotta bond it or what we gotta do.
Well, to do this,
We didn't bring it to us.
we have the money, to do this first, televising.
We do have,
It's just potentially, just $35,000.
Unless we find something wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, excluding repairs, of course.
That's 16,000 feet. Zone, 5 is 30,000 feet of pipe. So we'd essentially, if we had them do the whole zone, which we wouldn't have to, we could have them pound through, that'd be what, they get like 4,000 feet a day, so.
but we do have the money to televise it and heavy clean it. Zone 1,
For what's on this bid sheet, we have this covered.
okay. I would be in favor of doing that. Then if it needs repair, then sit down and figure out if we're gonna have to bond it or what we gotta do.
Well, we're allocating $100,000 in the new budget for televising cleaning lines. So come July, when most of this may take place, we're gonna have that money in there, and if the mayor's saying, we got money to do this now, we're not really at this point in a hurting situation to schedule to have it cleaned and televised, because we'll have that coming in July. So if they're moving on to something else, then we'll have more data. Got that to back up in July. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'd rather get a zone done and know what we gotta do instead of jumping all over the town. I won't support jumping all over from zone to zone. I'd rather get one done and, clean and done and know it's fixed. I've been told through the grapevine that the north side of Lafayette has issues, has a lot of infiltration, has a lot of water in the pipes. So that tells me that we got some issues in zone 1, not just cleaning.
Yeah, and that's why, the money that we have budgeted, that's why we budgeted that money is to do repairs in zone 1, why we're in zone 2. And then budget money as, spend the money as we have it budgeted throughout the zones.
I would back doing zone 1.
That's
Doing
what
what
I'd
you
like
mean,
to see then.
like, I don't understand, doing zone 1.
I would be in favor of doing zone 1.
Having them review and recommendations?
Whatever you need to do to get zone 1 televised and cleaned and find out what's wrong with it.
It's already televised and cleaned. And we already have information of what's wrong with it.
What is wrong with it then?
Well, there's infiltration, Chris even can probably elaborate a little more, if he's here, he is here. Chris, you wanna speak upon that?
Sure. Yeah, there's several areas in zone 1 that are major infiltration. I think most of them can be dealt with spot repairs. There's a couple on Miners and Saunders where a lot of the joints leak pretty heavily. I recommend grouting that. The pipe itself's generally in pretty good shape. But I very easily could have $100,000 to $150,000 of what I would call significant repairs to reduce I&I in that zone. And that's not even including some of the minor stuff. So like Chris was saying, I would fix your major infiltration sources before you spend that money televised in another section, because you're actually reducing the I&I. Televising cleaning is not gonna reduce I&I. Get your problems fixed, and in the meantime, the city crew could be working on the next section, coming up with another list of projects to do.
Well, Chris, what I'd like to know is, I'd like to know myself, I know what you're saying, but I'd like to know where and what are the major infiltrations So we're not cheating. If somebody has those facts to know that Joe Blow could come in tomorrow and fix these issues and they're documented and they're televised and we know it, great. But if it's not that way, there's no sense going forward till we know, as far as I'm concerned. But if you're saying, Chris is saying, I've talked with Charlie, he's an intelligent guy in this too. We got some issues over there, and my concern is, do we know all the issues? And is that what you're talking about, that would be corrected if we spend money, you're saying, on those repairs now and not televising, and then let them go to televise another zone, because you know what's wrong in zone one?
Right.
Exactly, you know what's wrong, without a doubt.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't understand that you knew everything that was in one.
Yeah, yep, we have, and, you know, I guess anybody can, you guys wanna see these tapes and look through them and kind of give
Is
you
it possible that
feedback,
we repair zone one while they're doing two? Can that be done?
That's part of the problem, I don't know where these are from. So, I need to get the ones from you guys with the list of which video goes with which line.
You basically have
He
one,
has that too, don't you, Chris?
when we first got it, they were just messing around with it, just
Yeah.
playing with it, trying to.
Yeah, cause I know some of them are starting at different footages, but you do see the infiltration. It's all water rushing out of that joint,
Mhm.
and there's multiple joints.
Oh, there's some gushers.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't really a matter of, Chris just leapfrogging around from zone to zone. It was, if we're gonna do this, cleaning and televising, let's hit the worst, zone. And I guess the Heights is where we ended up, right? That was the worst zone in the city?
No, that's the, no.
No.
I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I don't really know what the worst zone was. I think a lot of what he chose zone one to be the north of Lafayette is because Lafayette's getting redone. You know, that seems to be a generally wet area up there. We started our sump pump inspections up there. We're I think he's kind of following that same path of the sump pump inspections. So I think they're in,
Good.
I think they're in zone two with their inspections now. I don't know if that's still going on, but, is that kind of how you, came up with this?
We've got seven different lift stations in town, so I kinda watch those reports when we get the rain and see which ones go up more than others. So that's how we targeted Lafayette first, and then Michigan seems to be the second highest peaking one. We get heavy rainfall or really wet weather. So that's why I recommended jumping over to
Zone five.
zone 5. Once
But you
zone
said
one's
there's some
done.
work that we should get done first, potentially, before we would start televising any other areas.
North of Lafayette, yes, I would say that that's the worst infiltration source in the city. But they could be working on televising another section while that's being repaired.
He's saying city.
I guess my question is, Charles, I've talked to you about this, and we went to multiple places, is, if we're not gonna clean there, what does it cost to line them if, grouting or patching isn't gonna work? What is the cost variance difference between what I see here on cleaning and televising versus if we decide, or they decide, the whole thing needs to be lined?
Well, lining the whole thing typically ends up in the long run, it's gonna cost you a lot less, cause you're basically replacing the pipe. I mean, structurally, you're replacing the pipe that's there with a brand new pipe. So, you know, you're adding basically 50 years to the pipe right then. So if you're starting to get infiltration, that means that you could probably got a little bit of degradation on the outside of the pipe, that you can't see, even though the inside of the pipe looks great. There's been a lot of pipes that look great, and then all of a sudden you put a tool or something in the ground and it crumbles right away. So it's not just appearance, you know, when it comes to pipe, but, you know, lining's your best bet. Anything that will save you from a dig is gonna be your cheaper way of going. gauge for where it gets, starts getting really speedy, type thing, and start running into things like replacing asphalt and concrete and driveways and this, that, and everything else. And that's where I'm sitting there going, if we can sit down and get the lines and kind of go through the ones that you've got in that zone one and see what we can do with that 100 that's sitting in that spot and see how far that will go to complete zone one. Because really what I'm after is I'm after to take a zone, okay? We take a zone and we see how much I&I we pretty much stopped at the plant. In other words, how much return are we getting back at the plant? If we can actually show that we've returned, you know, let's say we reduce it by 35%, just in that one zone, then you can almost transfer that zone over to the other zones in town. They're about the same age, it's about the same structure. And then you see that you got, you know, a 30%, you know, difference in I&I. Then we've got an argument. We've got factual data that shows that we're under 1 million gallons. Because if you take their high number on the Nutrient Reduction Act and you reduce that by 35%, you're under 1 million. You know, we're way far in the game to be able to do that unless we hurry. You know, if we can show that we can reduce that, then that was an option that McClure had thrown out to might look at that side of things. You know, so, but it's going to give us a pretty good history of what's going on in the rest of the town. And instead of, you know, 16, 17, 18 million dollars, we're, you know, looking at 2.5, 3 million. So.
Well, so, do we wanna table the decision on this, tonight and do some more research on what zone?
Do you want me to reach out to them and see what they'll do for, review and recommendations? None of them would really give me a number on it, they just said, well, we'll just do it for free if we get the 16,000, so.
CIT is probably going to be your most responsive there.
I'll reach out to them and see what it costs to have them review our tapes.
Well, I don't even know that we need a motion on that, do we? It was just a discussion item.
Well, what you could do, since it's on the agenda the way it is you could say, make a motion
I'll make a
to have
motion
those reviewed.
to have those reviewed.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. Number 9 is the approval of the resolution calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
That's a roll call vote.
Sebel,
Yes.
Bender,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Motion carried. We have a request from Public Works to replace 12 cutting edges for the plows.
I'll make a motion to approve the request for 12 cutting edges to the plow.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
So, number 10, number 11, is a request to enter into an agreement with Bolton Inc. to design 2 sump pits pumps for the CRC. As everybody knows, it's an ongoing issue. We asked them to take a look at it and see what they could possibly come up with. And of course, they came up with $10,900 to design what they believe could work. With the cost being, that's just design, the 10.9, with the cost being right around 50,000 for 2 sump pits. And generally, because they haven't designed it, they've only described it to me, it's just a concept. It would be two very large, very deep pits in the general area where they're at. And they would discharge into the storm sewer. Which, I don't know, I know a little about it, and it seems like that's a logical solution.
I thought at one time somebody was looking at that they were gonna pipe all the way around the building and discharge it somewhere,
Well,
picking up before it actually came into the building.
I know that we had an option that was around the same thing as just the engineering to fix the problem.
it's coming through the floor, so it's not necessarily a wall issue. That exterior tile like that would be good for picking up the perimeter.
Yeah, and then
But
you put the
we're looking at
graded tile on the
groundwater, and there's an extensive array of tile there when they built it. But something I'm not familiar with, and maybe you know something about it, Mike or Chris, there's a bladder, a rubber bladder.
That's what I've heard, that there's some sort of a bladder underneath the concrete that was, the intent was to keep the water from being able to come up, but it has been able to come up somehow. Now it's my understanding, that water is able to get between the bladder and the concrete. If that makes sense. That's just what I've heard.
Yeah, and I have to believe that those tile are still effective. I took a look at the blueprints a couple of years ago, and of course, the foundation plan showed a pretty elaborate tile system, which there's no reason that that's not working. But, so the thought is that the existing sump pumps, they're just a little more than residential sump pumps, in my mind. Small pits, 40-gallon pits, they're just being overwhelmed. And that Adrian, the engineer, believes that the bigger, deeper pits with stronger pumps will definitely make the difference. So,
He needs $10,000 for that.
to design
It seemed to be the deeper they dig that hole, the closer they come to the swamp it's built on. You've been part of that over the last 8 years. We've had people from all over. And we've even had 3 pumps in each one of them pits. You walk in there and they're not full, but the basement's flooded.
So now, somebody told me that the pumps are running still.
I don't think they're running constantly, but they are still running, yes.
And they're still working.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if they're not running 24/7, we're not overwhelming them.
No,
So what's bigger pits gonna do?
well, yeah.
But there's not water on the floor.
No.
No.
No, I had heard this notion that lowering the lake had something to do with affecting the groundwater or whatnot. I don't know if that's the case or not. I have no knowledge.
If it's down 2 foot and if you haven't got any water,
Like I said, didn't Iowa Foundation Repair or somebody give us a fix for that? Shouldn't that be involved in this discussion?
It can be.
Wasn't that like 30,000?
It was 36,000.
No, but then there was somebody else that had an idea that it was gonna be like 11,000 something.
I can look through our agendas
Yeah.
to see.
Well, I
It's
mean,
a cheaper idea because it was kind of like, well, great, we thought I found something that would work.
But all of them, even this one, all of them are no guarantee it's gonna work.
No,
There's no guarantee.
no.
Even this one says, no guarantee.
yeah. When I look at it,
Fill it in,
Let's just keep throwing.
That's what I was gonna say.
fill that hole
Fill it
in, just fill it in.
my thought was to just cut a big hole in the center of the floor and go down until we hit water and see what we have.
we can make them pits 15 foot deep and 5 by 5, you don't need a $10,000 engineer.
I'll meet you down there next week.
I don't think that's the answer, Mr. Mayor, I really don't.
The,
We have fought that for 9 years with them pits. We've even tried pumping it back into the furnaces and using that water out of them to circulate and not use city water.
but the only issue here is that we've talked about a lot of solutions, and we really haven't done anything except Jerry Schaaf put in stronger pumps, but he never increased the pit sizes.
I have not yet, Dick, heard anybody that's against filling that sucker in.
How's what?
You know, people
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's a joke, but I have not yet
You're the
heard
one
it.
that suggested it years ago, fill it in.
Fill it in. Why not?
Well, because we have a mechanical room down there for one thing, but,
Make sure it doesn't mechanical.
yeah, no, and it's, I researched it a few years ago. It's a strategy that FEMA uses in some areas that are flood prone. They just fill them in. I don't think they would pay us to fill it in.
Have we had water in the basement since they lowered the lake?
I don't think so.
But there's no, it's so dry, it would be a miracle.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's the direct correlation, but yeah, I don't think we have.
Nothing else worked.
I kind of agree with Dick. At least finding out what you're working with might not be a bad idea.
I think it was just a coincidence myself, that the lake went down, because we had a dry summer. So, I think that's why the sump pits aren't running. The fall was wet, but we still have a subsoil moisture deficiency, so I don't know. Anybody got any?
I think we ought to hold off. We've talked about that. I've heard 4 or 5 things come to this table and we don't do it, and I don't hear anybody coming forward from there saying, we got a foot of water in the basement constantly. I think we need, instead of spending another $11,000 and get a plan telling us $50,000 so they're supposedly fixed. This is the 3rd or 4th person that's come forward with a price of how they could fix it, so I think we status quo, let it sit. And I'm not saying it might not have to be addressed, but I'm just not for giving the engineers more money to give us a diagram telling us it's $50,000 fix. They don't even know. They told you that they don't even know.
Well, the first one that can come to us with a guarantee, maybe we'll listen to.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so we won't go anywhere with the guarantee thing. I don't know. Like, this is how it's gone, I guess. We're never satisfied with the cost or the methods really to this point.
Well, Dick, what I'm saying is, if there was continued problems down there all the time, like a couple years ago or whatever, I went down there when they said they had some water on the floor. Yeah, there's some that did occur at that time. But I've never heard anybody say that there's water on the floor and all over all the time in the last year or two. So I don't know why why we're looking at options to fix something that we don't know what it is. Now we wanna hire an attorney or an engineer to tell us a plan. I think we're all smart enough to just see what it does, and if something comes up, then we have to do a plan.
Well, Justin, do you have a comment?
I was just wanting to address Councilman Siebel to help, and Chief Dean, please correct me. I want to say it was at least twice last year that the fire department flooded and we went and cleaned it again. I can tell you from at least the fire department side, that basement is useless. We continue to get equipment out, we continue to move stuff out. The floor is so coated with the iron deposit stuff left over. We can't even train on it even more because we would used to turn the lights out, go in for search and rescue and stuff. I have brand new gear, thousands of dollars worth of gear that I wore down a month ago for training. We're like, oh, that was a dumb idea because I'm coated in stuff that just needs washed off that gear. So on the fire side, I don't know how it is for the police side with your space down there, it is a useless space to us currently because of the uncontrolled nature of the flooding.
Well, the other concern, on the walls, you can see some, mold here and there, we have evidence down there, that we have to be concerned about as well, so.
Drywall from the bottom third still is not replaced, and I know from the fire side, this I know I can't speak for Chief Phillips, we're not even interested in replacing that because it's just gonna get ripped out again. So we keep it open, and so there's nothing that we're gonna secure down there, cause you can literally just walk between walls with our stuff. Not that we needed to secure the same as the police department, but there were still equipment things we like to keep under lock and key, just so that our members don't help themselves to some things, you know, that we keep our inventory. But it is enough of a problem that the space is not anything that we count as utilized. There's some things we moved upstairs into the garage. There's some things that just needed to be, you know, like any type of disaster, just sometimes a good spring cleaning. So we have gotten rid of a lot of things to lighten the load down there. But the storage has been the big factor, and then the exercise equipment that was utilized quite a bit by a handful of members when it was functional and at least known to be clean and not worried about any air quality or anything, you know, if that was an issue with the mold and whatnot. But very little usage at all. We've tore up, gosh, I know at least hundreds of dollars, if not potentially in the thousands aside, that the association put in for equipment, mats, electronics and things like that, that we've just had to pitch. That was not a cost to the city, but was a benefit to its personnel.
Do you have to know, Mr. Mayor, on what you're talking about with this engineer? Has he talked anything about drain pipes or anything through the flooring, some way to bring the water to there rather than flooding the place and it runs in?
Well, as I said, it has an elaborate drain system under the floor. It was built that way. So there is, you know, just a system of 4-inch drainage style under the floor. It's just not being effective. And the thing about this is that the engineer has some experience with this, you know. It's not just us sitting at the table kicking around ideas that we've seen or tried. These guys have some experience, they're engineers, they better have. So, I don't know, when they explained it to me, the idea of deeper, bigger pits and stronger pumps seemed like a reasonable solution. Now, you know, that may be, it may lead to the fact that then we've determined, well, the pits are doing their jobs, but the tile aren't big enough. So it may mean the next step would be cutting up sections of the floor and putting in bigger drain tile. There's no easy solutions to this. And actually, when he told me that he thought the two pits might be, well, essentially $25,000 a piece, I was a little shocked, because I actually believe it could be done less than that. But, so, you know, we made a good faith effort to get his opinion, and we're trying to solve this problem, and it's up to the council. I can get more information if you want. We could go with it and see what happens. I don't know.
You know, the $10,000 is kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what we've thrown at it over the last 10 years. If it would work, I just,
We don't know.
I haven't seen the plans that you're talking about, even all the time I spent down there. It shows all the elaborate work underneath it. Because the water actually comes between the wall and the floor, doesn't it? Comes up along where the two join together.
Well, I think it's come up in a few different spots. I think it's come up in spots on the floor and in the wall.
Yeah, I've seen it on the track and the floor too.
Yeah, yeah, I've been trying to figure out how,
Well, you know what, Gene, what we could do is, Mike, if you could pull those plans out, we could get the foundation plan out, and I could show you, because it's always in the foundation plan where they lay out the drain tile.
I don't doubt your word what you're saying, I'm just trying to figure out that, the last time it was actually down the base when we were fighting this, the water was coming up between the wall and where the cement come and where they soldered. And the pipes and the pits are not gonna stop that.
No, you're gonna have to channel it over there somehow.
You're gonna have to get the water from around the building gone to keep it from coming in. So I don't know if they can hook onto all that elaborate piping that's around there and get it to the pits.
No, they didn't think they would be able to do that very easily. To do the perimeter tile, the exterior perimeter into the pit.
Well, they do it interior as well, I think that's what we looked at for the foundation repair, wasn't it? Was them curving down the middle, putting the drain, and then all around the exterior walls, and then channeling everything over to the pits.
That's what that one suggestion was.
Correct.
But if you've got all that hydraulic pressure coming up, and the floor is not gonna just let water just come right through it, cause it's still a nice, pretty solid floor. So it's gonna force that water to the weakest points, and that's where it would come up, between the wall and the foundation. I don't know what the bladder was for, that visqueen,
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe it protected some insulation or something that's down there.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to get the bladder in.
Well, they put it down first and then poured the floor on top of it.
Oh, they're gonna pour another floor.
When they built it, they put down all the drain tile and then either put it's visqueen essentially, probably, over top of the tile and then poured the floor.
Oh, I missed a point somewhere along the line. I think I asked 3 times if there was tile going across the floors of these pits. You know, they're going to put those in.
No, there is already tile there.
But they're gonna bust the floor out to seal.
No, I'm suggesting that would be the next step.
Okay.
Could we ever discuss potentially building some sort of a pole building, perhaps, that we could use for training, storage, put equipment safely in there secure, I don't know, but, and not even use that lower level at all anymore?
It could be our indoor pool.
What?
That could be our
Could be an
indoor
indoor
pool.
pool, yeah, I don't know, just, I think it'd be a lot less expensive.
Yeah,
So this whole project, you're looking at $60,000.
potentially. We don't know until they
The
actually.
engineer, then doing the 2 pits, which is 50,000, he wants 10, that's.
That was just his estimate on the cost of the pits.
Probably the minimum cost.
He was
It could
just,
be more.
his price was 10,900 to design
And it might not work.
Did they give us any type of, we're gonna have to look up those estimates, because I don't believe.
I will. I'll email it to you tomorrow.
And, it wasn't just throwing in a couple of heavy-duty pumps. They had to be wired to the generator and that sort of thing, in case the power went out. I'm not sure that they are now, but he didn't feel like they were adequate. So that's part of his 10,900 design fee.
I think we need to table this and discuss a little bit more.
Because I was under the impression when Chief Jensen was here, I went down there with him and I think they only had 1 sump pit for a while. And they went to 2, thinking that was gonna be the salvation of all ills.
2 sump pumps.
Well, there's 2 pits there and,
Yeah. Or they went to bigger pumps but he showed me he had some there were some on the shelf and the two were in the holes. And he said sometimes they have to drop another one in there. But then since that discussion, I've never heard anybody ever say to me, we still got a real ongoing serious problem down there. I understand what Justin's saying, but I mean, back then it was like ongoing, this hasn't stopped, water all the time. I just don't like keep spending money and we never get a cure. I mean, that's.
Well, what we could do is I could meet different council people over there. We could take a look at what we've got and what I understand they're suggesting, and take a look at the blueprints for the tile. Now, one of those pits, I could be wrong about this, but one of those pits, it seemed like it's a little more than a 5-gallon bucket, where, I don't know who was mayor, Chad Deutsch maybe,
It's Deutsch.
had somebody just bust a hole in the floor and drop essentially a 5-gallon bucket in there.
That was
So,
the second pit.
we don't really have, in my opinion, a very efficient sump pump pit system over there. And then it was, rigged up, like I think you said, Gene, to run through the heat pump. That was a good idea, but it didn't work, and it all had to be redone. So we played around with it, but we've not really involved professionals in it. And I think that's where we thought Bolton Mink could give us some ideas. Now, like I said, I'd be glad to meet anybody over there, and we can take a look at this.
I'll make a motion to table the request by the do water to enter into agreement with Bolton until we further through this thing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, we got discussion, we have a request from the Public Works Director to replace the fuel pump on utility tractor.
Which tractor is that, Chris?
The wastewater department,
The green one?
Yep, or John Deere, no, 5101,
What series is that?
5,000 series. The fuel pump, he said costs about $2,000, and then they gotta tear half the tractor apart to get it replaced, and then put the tractor back together to put that house pretty shot. Yeah. All this high school.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is discussion and possible action on the wastewater service agreements. Chris Even is here, and he is doing business as Municipal Solutions, and he has made a proposal. Chris, you want to fill us in on what you're offering?
Sure.
Yeah.
So what I was proposing would be to kind of make Cheyenne the full-time operator down there at the wastewater plant. She'll hopefully get her grade 1 pretty soon. She's taking a class right now to get that. And then the DNR doesn't allow someone, like I do some other towns where I stop in there once a week with half a day operator and collect samples, do some testing for them. But the DNR doesn't allow that for the grade 3 plant. I hire whoever the grade 3 operator is, needs to be in direct responsible control of that. So it's pretty much there on a daily basis, but they don't necessarily need to be there full time. That's what the DNR requirement is. So what my proposal would be to stop, pretty much every day during the week for a couple hours and help Cheyenne with whatever she needs. If she's not there, I'd cover for her. But I kind of estimated about 10 hours a week there. some weeks we do a little bit more, some we do a little bit less, but that's just because we walk through. And then primarily responsible for the wastewater plant, because that's what we do to the operators for, but I did say that I would help out in trouble with lift stations. But I would propose that the Public Works Department is responsible for the collecting systems, routine maintenance on the lift stations. This is kind of up to the Public Works Director, but Cheyenne is going to need some help in the summertime. Her and I would be able to cover everything fine in the winter with her full time and stuff every day. But I would suggest hiring a seasonal employee to help out in the summertime. Actually, then in the summertime, you get more manpower, but less during the winter, they don't really move as much.
And what was the cost of your monthly?
$19.50, I believe.
$1,950 a month. And you would provide the basic service that we
I would
do.
do what you need to do to have grade 3 operator and keep it going.
I think everybody has that agreement in the municipal systems. So, what I was asking is, Chair, is that we'd be missing essentially a full-time employee. That how are we ever gonna pick up the slack? Because Cheyenne will stay, and she will be the day-to-day person. But you did a lot more than that, in addition to what she does. So, you're suggesting, I think Chris suggested, a seasonal employee.
She would basically be doing what he did,
And things are definitely
She can't sign
smaller in the
papers.
winter.
you know.
Like
I'm
I'm
gonna
thinking,
have to hire somebody part-time to do the mowing and stuff she did. She wouldn't have time for that.
right, and to help with the sewer cleaning, you need a second person there. Makes a lot easier.
If I understand the two agreements, and I've been trying to really look them over, either way, if Cheyenne calls Chris and says, I got a pump that's not working, Chris goes, okay, so you're right. Now, what happens with either organization? Does Chris fix it? Well, I understand, no. He gets hold of this Chris. They pull the pump, they have it fixed, they put it back in, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay? That's what I understand with the other company too. They look at it, it's not working, they call Chris, he pulls it out, he gets it fixed, he puts it back in. The only difference I see is about $10,000 a month.
Well, actually, I believe People Service would replace the pump, but they have a maximum amount per year for those items. That when they reach that $10,000, when they reach that, then yeah, they would put it back on our crew. Or go to the hourly rate of $70. What's your hourly rate?
45.
Okay. You do work in other cities, correct?
Yeah.
You work for Hudson. Who else do you work for?
Affidavit at Winthrop. I work part-time to Gilbert and Dunkerton.
Okay, what are your hour recommendations for them, what we call them, when you're about to get out?
Hudson, I think I got figured about 4 hours a week. Winthrop is 3 hours, I think I figured for them.
Per week? So if there's an emergency situation for them or for us, that becomes priority number one. Correct?
Which one becomes priority number one?
Well, that's what I'm asking, which one becomes
Whichever
priority?
one's the priority.
Let's say we all flood. First, it got to be two places at one time.
The only thing I'm an affidavit operator for is water and wastewater system, but not on site on a regular basis.
So that's what you're asking. They're not on the outside.
Well, I never said that I wouldn't be here at the meeting. I'm committed more to Evansdale than I am the other ones. 'Cause they've got full-time people and just basically oversee.
So we do have full time.
We have training.
And the street department.
And then the
also,
street
it's my
department.
department.
I mean, the only thing that I see between Cheyenne and a full-time 2 or 3 is just a phone call to the 3.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that I can handle.
Any more questions for Chris?
I'd like to know how the pricing came out. Y'all were doing a spreadsheet for pricing between the two.
Well, we have the, you mean that budget sheet?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna, if there's no more questions for Chris, go over people's services. Proposal.
Well, from what I've seen, looking at the sheet that I got from people, when you take out all the payroll things and the things that go along with what we're just naturally doing monthly, and you put in their fee of the monthly charge, it's pretty much a wash. And you don't have the union labor grade 3 operator on the payroll staff here. You're subbing it to people to be responsible for all these changes either on a regular basis, checking things out. You know, nothing against whoever is what, but I think it's much better for the city going forward with we're in wastewater treatment plant decision, budgeting, what's gonna be the best for the city, what's the way to go. I've had a lot of people getting a hold of me lately about all the options on the sewer plant. Naturally, you're not gonna make everybody happy, but I don't see a problem. I don't see a money problem by switching if we switch the people. I think the money's come out about the same, so if it was way more money, I know you could sit here and say, well, Steve, it's buku tens of thousands of dollars more, but when you go through this line item, and actually my thing was gonna be tonight too, if this did get changed, I was gonna ask Deanne, like the public works director's salary would have to go under public works if we were gonna separate these people as a contractor, I thought, but she tell me that's wrong. So that would, he'd still get his pay, but it'd be under another line item, road use, because you really can't keep, if we subbed it to somebody, you really can't keep his wages in there too, from what I understand from people I talked to. That should go over to road use for his total salary. Is that not feasible?
Sure, you can say that, but he's still gonna be responsible.
Well, from what I heard from people, they're pretty much saying they're gonna be here every day.
But if they have, which we do have quite frequently, if they had a call out at night, they're gonna call Chris, cause it's our equipment. So they don't own a backhaul.
Or we call Peoples and we pay that
No,
rate,
Peoples is gonna call Chris.
okay?
That should be
But I
clear.
have no, you're telling me now that happens a lot in the middle of the night,
Well, we had 16 last year,
for 1 a month.
yeah. I'm just saying, there is gonna be times where he needs to be involved.
Well, I understand that, but when they both were here and people give their presentation, he said he wasn't gonna step on any toes. They would be responsible in charge of that down there, and they weren't gonna step on their toes, and if they need help, he would get a hold of them. In no way would they just jump over the fence and get intermixed there, that they would be willing to work with them on that. But that would be their baby to take care of that, monitor that, the lift stations, all the testing, all the things they do. That would pretty much wash away. Chris wouldn't have to monitor peoples or work with peoples on it, he could. But they're in the field just like Chris. They're not gonna need to be watched over for their project. I think with what the city's facing, it's a much better way to go. I feel much more secure. having a company come in, they're writing out run daily. I think it's a win-win for the city with everything that we got going on, and they're really nothing against Chris, but that's, just how I feel about it. So the money thing, I want the money to stay out of it, because the money thing is not an issue between him and Peoples or the budget. That's kind of a worse.
I don't understand why you say it's not a deal. There's still $10,000 difference, no matter how you shape it. We're not paying him anymore,
I didn't say
so
that.
you're gonna pay him $2,000, you're gonna pay them 12. Is that not $10,000 a month difference?
But when you take everything out of the budget line item, with him being the operator down there on a full-time status,
That's not true anymore, that's all over.
You're still gonna be paying for labs. Chris, do you pay for labs, or what do we pay for labs?
No, that's part of the city.
We'd still pay for labs, their labs are included. There's one example. There's a whole example goes straight down the line.
The other thing though is that you're not eliminating half of Chris's salary or Cheyenne's salary. You're still proposing to pay those two, so you're not completely wiping out the wages line item in the sewer budget. But like Charles said, there is other things that People Service is paying for. It's not, you can't just do a direct comparison between 2,000 and 12,000.
And I think, though, Steve, to answer your question, Chris's salary, I think a portion of it in Cheyenne's will always be in the wastewater line items, a portion of it. But, so People Services identified, I don't know, a lot of cost savings from not having Chris as a full-time employee. His salary with benefits was like $83,000, which essentially is a big savings. But they also identified other savings. Charles has that budget sheet. The maintenance. The items that Chris as a full-time employee was doing, People Service would do that. So it makes it a hard comparison for me. And I had asked them some questions.
We don't have any of this.
No.
If, if they were a full-time service, and basically they said whatever it takes to get the job done. So they may be there 1 hour a day, they may be there 5 hours a day. So there's no guarantees in that regard.
How does that work as far as the compliance with the DNR?
There would be whatever requirements they are.
It would meet
Yeah,
the
it would.
requirements.
They fully assured us that they would do whatever it took to be compliant. And I don't know if everybody got their agreement. So everybody has their agreement with the responsibilities that they would do. And I had sent them some general questions, and again, it makes it kind of hard because they offer a good service. And we had checked with Elk Run, we had checked with LaPorte, and they have good references. So I don't know, I was pretty satisfied with their answers. But it is $12,000 a month. And it's in advance. That was the thing that kind of surprised me. I've been in business and I've never been able to collect in advance, but, if you can get it, great deal.
I was just making the point that the money, the bottom line, when you get to the bottom line for what we've got going now versus if it went that contract way with people, the money per month averages out pretty much the same as having Chris down there full-time with benefits and the wages and everything. It's not, whether you wanna say $10,000 difference a month, yes, but in the year's end budget looking at it, it's pretty close to dollars and cents either way. It's not like they're paying
And it depends on
$100.
whether you want to be, whether you're comfortable with the part-time,
The seasonal.
Yeah. and then your house will hire a seasonal on the end of it.
Yeah.
Professionals has already reached out to say that they would be happy to help her with her training.
Yeah, they agreed to do the mowing and some shoveling, snow removal. But as somebody pointed out,
Their insurance is stronger.
you know, we're keeping Cheyenne as well. So that was, an expense we hadn't really factored into their contract. But, because it wouldn't bear directly on their contract, I guess.
I would say though that I penciled it out, and if you hired me on a contract basis and hired a seasonal employee, you would actually reduce expenses by about $26,000 a year compared to what the city's paying now.
Well, my honest opinion is, and I've looked at these both, and looked through the budget, line item, they're both excellent proposals, and I think the city would be well-served either way. So, I don't know.
I didn't read this specifically, but is this, a contract for like a year's basis, or was there a time frame on that for you,
I think originally it was set up for a year.
for 1 year?
Right now, we're on month to month.
Yeah, I don't have a problem doing month to month, that's what I do on a lot of my contracts.
And I had asked people service about, because the contract, I believe, specified 5 years, but he was totally open to an annual contract, because he knows that we're considering a connection to Waterloo.
Well, they also wanna have plenty of time so they can have somebody that actually moves into the community and actually becomes part of the community to run the wastewater facility. So when they hire people, they're trying to get them into that town to take care of it.
Why would they do that if they're gonna go to Waterloo?
What's that?
Why would they do that? if
No,
we're-
you're saying in general, that's
Oh,
why they
in
do
general,
5 years, so.
They're pretty flexible, and as I said, every time I've contacted People Service, they're very responsive and friendly and give me good answers, but so is Chris. So, I don't have a vote.
You know, me personally, I'd like to see the vote on this put back till the second meeting in March. Have more time to go through this and really analyze it, rather than jump into it.
It's a tough decision.
It is.
It's a difficult decision.
Yeah. Well, what then I would suggest is that we extend, if Chris is agreeable to it, his contract for another month.
Through the end of March.
If-
Another basis for my thought, I'd like to see 5 councilmen, all wards represented, because this is a big decision.
It really is.
Well, you know, that's a good point. Related to that, you know, we do have some applications, and we hope to get those to the council and make that decision on the 2nd. So it might not be a bad way to go.
We should have that seat filled by the last meeting in March. Because we'll be talking to these people and be ready to appoint one, have the council appoint one by the first meeting in March.
And if there's,
We've got 3 people, I know 2 of them. One of them is, I think, is very outstanding. But when we get to the point where we wanna talk about that, I'll state my reasons.
you know,
But, I think one has got something that the city really needs. I have a favor.
well, so I'd entertain a motion to,
I would make a motion, we table this until the second meeting in March.
And that would be with the understanding we would extend.
Well, no, I'll make a second motion.
Okay. So we have a motion to table, any action on the wastewater service agreement until the first meeting in March,
Second
the
reading.
second.
Reading. You need a.
Oh, you,
Oh, second,
you don't wanna make a decision on this March second?
No,
no.
no.
Okay.
I wanna wait
You'd
till
rather
we
go
have,
to-
I wanna wait till
Okay.
we have five, all wards represented, so.
Okay, all
We can
right.
hear from Ward 4 also.
Mayor, I wanted to say one thing here, Routine. We've had this information for over a month.
Yeah.
It is another month to look it over, Gene, I find kind of ridiculous. You're a pretty knowledgeable guy. This was put in front of, actually, over a month ago. Even myself, I've done the homework and the research. I have not talked to Chris personally yet, but I don't know why, I mean, I know why, but I think that this was brought up to make a decision on these contracts with 4 council people sitting here, and I understand what you're saying, but I think we voted to make a decision, and if we're not gonna live by it, I'm not gonna support backing this up another month and wait to get a person in here that,
Well, we might have a 50-50 vote, so
we don't
I-
know. How can you
well-
blame anybody if you don't know?
I think we could vote, because I am not ready.
I'm just asking, haven't you had time to look things over in the last month?
Well, this is a
Contract?
new proposal tonight.
No, it's the same proposal.
This is new to us. This isn't something what Chris is sharing with us tonight. This is not something we've talked about in the past. And
This
it
is the
hasn't
first
been
time
over a
we've
month.
been able to talk to Chris. And
You gotta-
I've done a 180-degree turn in the last week.
There really is a lot to think about.
I'm not disputing who or, I'm just saying, we made a decision to make a decision.
Yeah.
And now you wanna back it up, I know why you wanna back it up.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if you do your homework, Chris is here talking tonight, but he talked the other night too when Peoples was here, and we made a collective decision.
Actually, I wasn't given the opportunity to speak the other
He
night.
was not asked to speak that night.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know he didn't get to speak. But we still got the information, and a month's time to have homework to make some calls and read these over. I don't know why it required another month. I know why, but I think you've had this long enough to make a decision on the contract difference.
I feel like it's a great reason to wait another month. I think having another council person makes great sense for the community. That area of the city that's represented by somebody who can cast a vote. This is a big decision. It could be more costly, or we could save some money. And I do think we need a little bit more time.
So, Gene made a motion to, delay the decision.
I'll rescind that motion. I'll let Councilman Siebel make his motion.
I have no motion tonight.
I'll make a motion to bring people service into the city of Evansdale.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to go with people services? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's a tie.
Want to call for opposed? Want to call for opposed?
So generally, we just go, we'll use Chris until we, fill the other position? We're at a standstill. The motion dies for a tie, so we can't go without a service agreement.
I don't have a problem with that. We agreed to give him a contract agreement for the month while we discussed it. Now we're sitting here a month later saying we gotta discuss it some more. I'm saying on the record, it's not a point to discuss the contracts anymore. I mean, I think anybody that sits at this table is knowledgeable enough to know you get your information, you get your packet, we're provided all the information. What I got in front of me is gonna be no different in a month or 6 weeks or 2 weeks. I've read it. I'm gonna talk to Chris this week. I've talked to people, and I don't see why it takes another month to make a decision on the contract.
Yeah, So you made your point, we understand. Charles made a motion, it died. All we can do at this point is renew our contract with Chris for another month and bring this back up in March. I don't see any other avenue. Unless I'm missing something here, but
That's the way it seems.
Well, he's there till, what, March 1st? So,
Month to month, so he can continue through March as well.
So Chris's contract would have to go to March 31st.
Yes.
yeah, you're making that motion.
I can make a motion to extend the contract through March 31st for Chris.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to extend Municipal Solutions contract to the end of March. All in favor?
Right.
Opposed?
no,
Well, so you're putting it on me, I guess, and we're not gonna go without a treatment plant operator. So I'll be making an executive decision to renew that contract. And the issue will be back on the agenda. If everybody feels like they need, well, not everybody feels, some of the council feels like they need a little more time and possibly having that fourth board position filled, the second meeting, I guess, is the obvious choice. So,
and what if not then? What happens if nobody's appointed then?
Somebody will be appointed, because there can't be a 50-50 vote that day.
I would say,
The second week of March, we should have 5 city council members sitting here. There should not be any, there won't be an opportunity for it, one or the other not to pass. One will
because,
pass.
that's right, we would appoint,
Do you not understand that, Charles? There would be 5
They're
council,
appointed by council.
yes, and there would be 5 of
So
us
we-
to vote.
So 3 of us have to agree with one of these.
3 of us would have to agree,
Correct.
yes.
at
And if
this,
not, it goes to special election. If not, and it's 2-2, it goes to special election.
How would it still be 2-2 if there's 5 council people sitting here?
There would,
There must be.
he's not a council person until he's appointed, there's still two to hire.
True, but
Then you'd have to go to special election.
so we're talking about whether or not we're going to appoint somebody now? Is that what you're saying?
We won't know till the
Discuss that
first.
right now.
Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to that.
yeah, we would just, the council would have to agree on the candidates.
Correct.
So we have 3 pretty good candidates, I think, so I'm assuming we can come to some conclusion on that March 2nd.
Yeah, seeing what I see there, I probably wouldn't turn down any of them.
Yeah,
I have 2 in mind that would be, I think, excellent.
and you know, if the council's having a hard time deciding, throw it back to me and I'll make an appointment. I don't have a hard time deciding. All right. Budget workshop. It's all fairly simple. Not many changes. I don't know if everybody got the cover sheet that Joe, Deanne put together. It's essentially all pretty good news. With no increases and no changes really from where we were at last meeting.
I just had one question. What would be the amount of the reserves out of debt, for the way the budget is tonight?
are you talking about general fund or in general? Just general fund, the same it was last time, 50,000.
Can we ask,
50,229.
can we ask what is in the reserves?
Oh, it's like 5.4 billion,
5.4
million.
Sure, 50,000.
5.4.
I didn't have any other questions.
So the rate stays the same at 7.948 with 50,229 from reserves to keep that rate the same.
And if you don't mind me adding this, where we had some revenue that we received this year that we weren't planning. We received over 95,000 in the general fund for GMET, participating in that program, that we didn't plan on having as extra revenue this year. For the CARES Act, because of COVID, we received $112,725. Additional revenue this year that we were not counting on. Normally, like you'd stated, you wouldn't want to, draw any from the reserves, but there was a lot of extra put in there this year that we didn't count on, so over $200,000.
So a lot of cities were in a position where they desperately needed those funds, and we were able to keep them reserved, essentially. So. Now, Deanne, talk a little about, there was some potential changes in the park board budget from that worksheet or estimate that you showed me today.
Yeah, and I think that the park board does understand this, but their project has turned into like a $480,000 project. I'm helping them with the grants and speaking with Intercog, et cetera. And they needed an updated what this vision was gonna look like. Because if you're doing a $480,000 project, the likelihood, and we're only budgeting 155, the likelihood of them giving us 75,000 towards that project is pretty slim, because you're gonna be, where's the rest coming from? So we really have to slim down that, the park really needs to slim down their projections for that project. Cause I think they're throwing in a bunch of electrical too. And so we're waiting to receive mention about that, but that would be general fund, and we can't, we just scheduled our max levy hearing. Once you schedule that, that's in stone. You can't go up on general fund.
So you had talked to Travis Nichols today about the discrepancy in what they were asking for and what that worksheet or estimate,
Electrical.
yeah.
They threw a bunch of electrical stuff in
It
there.
was it something they didn't foresee? Or something they don't plan on doing, including?
When they went, the last time they flooded, they wanted to have, almost like removable boxes, because we're spending $85,000 every time that Deerwood gets flooded. So I think that was part of the project. So we just, the park department needs to just really pull some of that back and.
It's a raise in the boxes, like he was talking.
So they're gonna scale back then, their budget overall is gonna scale back because of this?
No, their budget's gonna stay the same. I'm just saying, we're trying to help process this grant through for them, and I got an estimate of $480,000, so. I think Dick just wanted to give you a heads up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was a discrepancy from what I think we understood here. And when Deanne showed me that engineer's estimate, discrepancy by about $200,000. So, but it's not budgeted, so that's where the rubber meets the road. Any budget questions? And by the way, we've still got, a couple of public hearings for the budget?
We'll have one at the next meeting, that's the max levy, and then the next one is the final. And then it'll be at our second meeting, and that's like the latest we can do it. We're really running behind this year, but everything that's happened,
Do you need a motion to set the budget?
we already did that. We already did it, it was in the resolution calendar.
I thought it was, but I was just checking.
I want to thank Dan for all the time she puts in on this. Every year makes it a little bit easier to family understand it. I don't think anybody totally does, probably by you, but at least it's a little bit more comfortable after a little bit of time doing it. You've been very good at providing the stuff we need, so thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
You can go to her and she explains it in layman language so you understand it.
Yeah, good.
The
All right.
biggest thing I see is we're 118,000 less out of general funds to balance this year than we were last. So I think it's a move in the right direction.
Yeah,
167,000 something last year.
was it that much?
Yes,
Oh,
118,000 less this year.
yeah,
Again, thank you, Deanne. I know that you butchered on it all you could.
Well, everybody has in the city, they really worked on it this year.
yeah, she's with, giving up 6 months of her salary just to help the budget look better,
Thank you,
so.
Dan, we appreciate that.
She doesn't know that yet.
When do you see your new duties coming?
So any other questions on the budget? We'll move on. So we had an item here, number 15, to consider a virtual tour of the treatment plant. And I got ahead of myself, I guess. I had a call from the Public Works Director in Waterloo asking me to kind of hold back a little bit because they still had some issues to resolve with DNR. So I put together, I think everybody has this sort of plan. It was on the table. Just some points of how I saw this going. And I emailed this to Randy Bennett, who's the Public Works Director in Waterloo, to see if he agreed with this, and he did. But I think the important thing that I pointed out to him is the first 3 items have to be agreed to or end of conversation. And he agreed to that. So, but I also made it clear to him that I believe it's a great opportunity for Evansdale to connect to Waterloo. We'd essentially have a new plant, we'd be out of the sewer business, and we'd have plenty of capacity for our new development. So, he's still open, obviously, to the tour, but we'd probably, whereas I wanted to get it scheduled in March, we're probably looking more like April and May, assuming the first 3 work out. And assuming, maybe I should ask this question before we go any farther. Is there a consensus that we want to connect to Waterloo if we can make it work?
if we find that it's an option that makes the most sense for the community. But
Yeah,
there's a
we
lot of
have some
unknowns.
hard numbers, other than what we got to know, user fee rates and stuff like that, that'd be a little more comfortable. Right now, we just know what they proposed on the plan, but I'd like, if we get harder numbers, I can entertain that as well as other discussion, but yeah, I'm open for that.
Yeah, well, Charles?
Yeah.
Gene?
Yeah.
So I think, the thing that was the most illuminating for me when I was there is to realize that our entire flow is just 3%
Oh, there.
of theirs. Hell, one of their wards has more people than our whole city. So that's what our contributions towards any future improvements would be, 3.5% or something.
So there should be 3% of what Waterloo pays on the bill, right?
Yeah, well, they have those improvements staggered over the next 10 years. So for us, it'd be $75,000 to $100,000 staggered over the next 10 years for their improvements. But it puts us out of the sewer business and immediately gives us, I looked at it the other day, like $150,000 in savings by being out of that business. When you start looking at a wastewater operator. So, anyway, that's where we're at, and Randy said that he would keep me informed, and, definitely keep the council informed.
If we hook up to this question, who takes care of our lift stations then?
We do.
So in that aspect, either one of the two companies we're talking about taking over the sewer right now, wouldn't need either one of them.
So it gotta be a class two. Still gotta have a class two. No, you don't, not the lift stations.
You don't
No.
So I don't know, there's a lot of advantages to that. Our street department would handle the collection and the lift stations. So, all right, public discussion, if we've got any public left. Mayor, council reports. I just wanted to point out one thing here. We get some complaints about our code enforcement and why aren't we doing more, why aren't we issuing tickets? I'll give you a good example of one that Brian's been working on River Forest Road. The gentleman there was issued a ticket for $700 because he ignored our requests. We'd given him a lot of warnings. So Brian issued that ticket. It went to court. The gentleman pled not guilty. The judge suspended the fine and gave him until April 1st to clean it up. And if he gets it cleaned up by April 1st, the fine is forgiven. So how's that for enforcement?
Wow.
I mean, we have no teeth whatsoever. I had heard that over the years, but this one I've been following. So it was an eye-opener, I thought. So,
Is that a business on River Forest Road?
no,
No, it's River Road. You're talking
River
about
Road.
Hellman?
River Road, okay.
River Road.
River Road,
Okay.
excuse me.
That's the one the gentleman was here at the last one and talked about, okay.
Yeah, that's public information, so we don't,
I was gonna say River Forest Road narrowed it down to one person, and I didn't
yeah.
know he got a ticket.
Well, it used to be called River Forest Road, so I'm still hung up on that. So the only other thing I have is that Dottie had twisted Lynn's arm again to be the council liaison to the water board, so she must have been pretty effective.
Yeah.
So So Lynn is our water board liaison.
Can I have, Michael Dean explain what happened to as far as enforcing our tonnage on semis? What happened in the courts as well?
Well, yeah, so we've had over the years, many complaints from citizens about the semi-traffic through town. And we have signs that attempt to address those things as you come into town from various directions. And so in our efforts to mitigate the issue, we issued tickets when we saw violations. A lot of times officers would see a truck come into town and follow that vehicle to see if it's in fact doing business in town or if it's just passing through to try to a shortcut elsewhere. So one particular incident that happened, I was actually in a citation I issued. The gentleman came in on River Forest Road and he was headed to a business just outside of town on Lafayette. He pled not guilty, we went to court, and the judge essentially said that he didn't feel the violation was too egregious to warrant following through with the fines and whatnot, and he threw it out. So essentially, he thumbed his nose at the citizens and the taxpayers of Evansdale who pay for these roads, in my opinion. And said that it's okay for semi-traffic to come through as long as it's not too egregious. And that's just one example of many.
Yeah.
Get that road, we've talked about this before, another thing we talked about was talking, but, put a weight on that road.
Could we put a weight on it?
Yeah.
I suppose we could, I don't know. One of the things he did recommend is the judge felt that our signage was not good enough, thought it should be bigger, thought it should be explain more, I guess.
Well, truckers, you know, cause I actually drove a truck for a while, and, you know, they look for the weight limits.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well, a lot of, typical excuse that we get is that, you know, my GPS led me this way, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
I just thought it was interesting that the judge felt that it wasn't that egregious of a violation. And then I'm thinking in my mind, you know, the taxpayers pay for these roads, you know.
yeah, and they're starting to get some tracking down.
Yeah. And the other issue is it becomes an issue of determining whether they're actually doing business in town. You know, if I'm a truck driver and I'm passing through town, knowing that this is a shorter distance to my, you know, to location B, and if I stop at Quick Start and I buy a candy bar, have I now done business in town? You know, that's, you know, we had an incident like that happen where a gentleman came into town, stopped at the chiropractor, got his back adjusted or whatnot, and went about his business.
What's your best suggestion? If not, we have
Well, my suggestion probably would be to talk to the city attorney about how to be more creative, I guess, I don't know. It's difficult.
put one of those bars across like the slide.
Right.
You
Then we'd be sued.
Kind of gets to like the engine brake deal out of the highway. Every single truck goes by, pull the engine brake on as soon as they see the water.
That's the same thing.
And I know you can hear it all over town.
Okay. Yeah, it does feel like you're hitting your head against the wall sometimes.
No, we can actually stop that if we can get, DOT to take down those two signs. We wouldn't have that anymore.
Oh, good.
They're just showing you they can do it. You know, I've talked to you about it, it's almost impossible
Yeah.
to find them. But if they take those two signs down, we wouldn't have that problem anymore.
Are those our signs or the DOT?
Those are DOT. If they were ours, we'd have had them down by now. DOT puts those up. If we could find a way to get the DOT and have them taken out, we wouldn't have that engine problem, brake problem, honking at 3 o'clock in the morning, we wouldn't have that anymore.
Anything from the council?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Chris, do you need this back on here from Dan or?
You can have that one, I got it, I mean, it's on our shared folder, so I can get that one.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, hon.